Firstly, probably just to acknowledge that Ryde is really a very old part of Sydney. It's the third settlement in Sydney, so it often doesn't get the same reputation as Parramatta in the city of Sydney, but it has, down the road which you walk past, Addington Cottage is the oldest farmhouse in New South Wales. And the pumping station that some of you got to today is itself part of Sydney's history. It was built at the end of the last century, and the building you saw there was built in 1921. It's one of, supposedly the finest examples of Federation municipal architecture in New South Wales, and it is a very impressive building. The interesting thing about it was built to service the whole of the northern part of Sydney, so the water pump from there services everywhere right up to Pymble, St Ives, Ku-ring-gai, so it's a massive part of Sydney's infrastructure. Originally the pumps were driven by steam, and the coal was delivered by rail off the northern line, was dumped into huge hoppers, and this whole part of Ryde was covered in smoke most days. So that was the history. 1961, and a coal man was part of it. 1961 they put in the current pumping, which is all done obviously now by electricity. But I think the interesting thing about that is that when I read up about it, the reason they did that is because they had just built all the power stations on the Central Coast and up in the Hunter Valley. And although we don't like those power stations now, they were an amazing part of the infrastructure of the state. The foresight of our grandparents to build those things is what has made New South Wales what it is. And of course now that pumping station doesn't pollute the air, but the power stations that produce the electricity do. And that's exactly where the Greens Party, and I'm sure all of you are at now, is that now is the time for some foresight and some vision for the future. We need to replace those coal-fired power stations with solar power stations. And that way, that infrastructure that you went past is so critical to Sydney's health and well-being, can remain as it is, and will continue to get value from that for another 50 or 100 years. So I'd ask you all to think on that, is that we really need to push not only for clean water and protection for the water, but also for clean power to be able to make use of that wonderful water. So that's why